Hello survivors and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to be looking at the upcoming Ascendable free-to-play characters that have been leaked, and these are Douglas and Rick. Both of them are Guardian characters. It's the ones I'm showing on the screen. Douglas you can get from 5-star tokens, and Rick you can get from prestige tokens. Obviously Rick's going to be much harder to come by if you haven't got him already. Douglas could be fairly easy to come by if you haven't got them already, but again, it could be really difficult. It's all down to RNG on those 5-star tokens. Now, these are obviously two Guardian characters, and we don't have any sort of idea of what they're going to be, so I'm going to just walk through as they are as a 5-star. So we'll start off with Douglas, and as you can see, he is classified as a tank. He had fairly balanced attack and defense stats as a 5-star and boosted HP, but that's pretty much how it was for a lot of 5-stars. Unless they were a damage dealer, they generally had pretty much similar stats to what Douglas has here. His rush is 56 AP, doesn't mean too much in terms of what he's going to be like as a 6-star, but his actual rush itself, all teammates get 50% defense and 50 crit for 2 turns. Up to 2 teammates regain up to 60% of their max HP. So he's very much a support character. I don't know why he's classified as a tank. I'm not really sure why. I guess it's because of the defense buff, but I would see this guy more as a support character because he heals. He might even be changed to be classified as a medic when it comes to the 6-star era. He may be massively changed. He could have his rush massively changed. Now, this is what I think he could turn out like as a 6-star, and as you can see, I've gone for 1500 attack, so on the low side, 1800 defense and 2000 HP. Obviously these are very rounded numbers. It's probably going to be quite a little bit different than this, but in terms of the balance, I think it's going to probably go like this if he is going to remain a tanky character. He could probably do with less attack stat, if I'm honest. If he could go down to 1300, 1350, that would be even better to boost that defense and HP a little bit more. We do not need his attack being any higher, that's for sure. If he could sacrifice anything, it would definitely be that attack. Now, when it comes to his role, I'm not sure how that's going to change. He could remain as a tank, and his buffs from his rush could change, or he could change to a medic, and then I think they'll keep the heals on his rush. Now, the rush I went for, I think it should never be really higher than 76 AP. Pretty much, unless it's like a really overpowered rush, and I don't see any free-to-play characters really having overpowered rushes, if I'm honest. All teammates get 60% defense and 60 crit for 3 turns, regain 30% of their max HP for 2 turns, and recover from taunt. So basically, he is a really big like medic and support character. So if he was to get a rush like this, I would not be surprised if he was sacrificed from being a tank to a more support character, and that could be reflected in his stats as well, where it'll just be more all-rounded, which would be a shame because, like I said, that attack's going to be useless on someone who hasn't got an attack stat on their rush. Now, in terms of the active skill, I think Recover and Pair would be pretty good. Then he could be used on an attack team in certain setups against ranged teams. On defense, there aren't too many Recover and Pairs. Within free-to-play, I think within ranged teams, there's Erica, and there is Michonne, Disarm Michonne. The only free-to-play character that I know of is Jessie, that has Recover and Pair on the active skill, and she is not great on a defense team. And definitely like the upgrade slot, if you do have her on your defense team, you're going to probably want to upgrade her as soon as possible. This Recover and Pair is identical to Guardian 2 Ezekiel, and obviously Guardian 2 Ezekiel was released like a year and a half ago. The specialist skill, I've just straight upgraded that to Guardian 2, just because if he is a Guardian as a 5-star, he should remain a Guardian as a 6-star, and the upgrade would obviously be Guardian 2 for that, in my opinion. So this is how I see Douglas sort of turning out if he was to keep the same sort of rush. I think his role would change to a medic at this point, but he's just an all-round buffing character, and I don't mind this. I think he would be a pretty good 6-star like this. Not amazing. He'd obviously need other characters, but he could go behind an Eric on a defense team and pretty useful. He could be fairly decent on an attack team as well with that Recover in Pair, and the fact that he, gives a little bit of buffs and a heal as well. He wouldn't be spectacular on an attack team. Guardian's okay just to stop some AP gain, but it would mainly just because if you needed Recover in Pair on an attack team. And a lot of the time I see a lot of people using, or at least I do use Guardian Ezekiel behind a Andrea, and you're using a character that doesn't gain any sort of lead bonus, whereas Douglas would start gaining lead bonus. So it's kind of what's needed within free to play is, you know, that tough or alert, mainly tough character that is going to recover, impair, and be fairly useful on an attack team. So next up we have Rick. Same sort of deal. He is a Guardian character, and again, he is classified as a tank. His stats are pretty much balanced the same way as a 5-star, and that will reflect in the 6-star stats that I've done, pretty much identical to Douglas. His rush was 45 AP, so nice and fast. It was an adjacent attack, and I have kept that as a 6-star, but we'll see. Deal 300% damage to one enemy and all enemies adjacent to it. This character gets 80 crit for 2 turns, and obviously is specialist skill Guardian. As a 6-star, the balance of the stats I kept the same as Douglas. I think out of the two, if they were to change up the stats at all, I think Rick would be much more beneficial, obviously, if his attack was increased. Like, I would be 100% fine if this guy had balanced attack, defense, and HP, where it was all around the same, you know? That would be actually pretty decent. And obviously at that point, I think his role would probably change from being a tank to more of a damage dealer. But there's nothing wrong with that, being a damage dealer Guardian. We don't have, I don't think, really any really good damage dealing Guardians. Maybe Glenn, who's a promo, who's pretty decent damage. So we'll go across to the rush and just see what I changed. It's 76 AP again. That should be the maximum. Fast is absolutely fine, but never go over 76, please. Deal 350% damage to one enemy and all enemies adjacent to it. All teammates get 60 crit and 60% attack for 2 turns. So instead of himself getting just the 80 crit buff, it's everyone getting a crit buff and an attack buff. This guy could be usable in this, you know, as this sort of character on certain attack teams because of this, because obviously a 60% attack is really nice. And on defense teams, just because he's got Guardian 2, he could be quite useful. And it depends on how they change up his role, how they balance the stats. That's going to really be key. I don't actually see him keeping that adjacent attack personally. I think it's more likely to change to a line attack or attack 3 enemies. I don't think he's going to keep that adjacent attack. I only kept the adjacent attack there because I couldn't really think of where to go. I think it's either going to be a line attack or attack 3 enemies or you know, hit two enemies. I'd be very surprised if the adjacent attack was to stay. For the active skill, I went with recover stun, but just because there's not many recover stuns within melee characters that are openly available. Joshua is it, and he is not a great character. Rick would not be spectacular, and I don't necessarily think he needs it. Maybe recover impair. I think one of those two would be really good, and it's identical to Mirabelle's recover stun, where it's turn 2 star and it recovers stun for 2 teammates. Now Rick could be used on an attack team against ranged teams. It could take up the slot that Mirabelle does on some teams. In terms of bypassing, regardless if he had recover stun or recover impair, he could just take up the slot on, instead of, like I said before with Douglas, he could take up Ezekiel's slot. Because he's got an attack bonus stat, it would actually be really useful on certain attack teams as well. It would make Tyrese a lot stronger on those rushes. And I definitely switch that up personally. If I got this Rick, which I don't unfortunately have this Rick, but if I got this Rick and he was like this, he would be on my attack team against ranged teams just because of that 60% attack buff, which would be really powerful in combination with Tyrese. So that's it. Those are the upcoming 2 Ascendable 5-stars. These are my just rough ideas / predictions of what they could be as a 6-star. When they get released, I will compare how they are released to my ideas. I could see them being very, very different. They generally have something tacked on, and they generally have their rush expanded a little bit. I just don't want to go too overkill, and we'll see. I think we could potentially see big changes to certain rushes. Like, I think we could see either big changes to Douglas's rush where he doesn't heal anymore, and we could potentially see big changes to Rick where he's not doing the adjacent attack. I wouldn't mind too much, just as long as they have some power. It's very important, of course, that they're Generation 2 6-stars. The stats that I did in terms of the balance did reflect Generation 2. I think that, like I said before, Douglas can sacrifice attack, doesn't need it. But potentially, I wouldn't mind Rick having his role completely changed to be more of a damage attack character and having that attack stat boosted to reflect that. I think he'd be very, very strong. But that's it in my video. Do tell me what you think about Douglas and Rick becoming the next Ascendables. What do you think of my ideas as them as 6-stars? Do you have any ideas of what could make them quite nice? Like maybe with the active skill, maybe with obviously something that could be added onto their 5-star rushes. But that's it in my video. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.